Hello, biologists. Today we're going to talk about the details of how evolution actually occurs. We're calling this the mechanisms of evolution. First, we have two types of evolution. We have microevolution and macroevolution. Microevolution is changes in allele frequency in a population every generation. And that happens because I am not exactly genetically the same as my parents, and my offspring will not be genetically the same as me. So that's just changes in your population over time. We may or may not see those alleles be expressed, but there is subtle change there. Now, little change over time can lead to big change, and that's macroevolution. Macroevolution is long lasting that we measure in evolutionary time, which means thousands to millions of years. Now, microevolution can lead to macroevolution, and macroevolution can absolutely affect our allele population. So the two kind of go hand in hand. There's two terms that go with macroevolution. One is the loss of every individual of that species. That's called extinction. That's why I have a picture of a Tyrannosaurus fossil for you. So Tyrannosaurus is extinct. Every single one of its individuals is gone, has died off. And the other word is speciation. Speciation is the opposite of extinction. It's creating new species instead of losing a species. So what do we need for this to occur? We need mutations. So some mutations happen randomly. Some mutations happen because of what we call a mutagen, like exposure to UV radiation, or something else. Like in our current day now, a mutagen would be like exposure to alcohol or tobacco smoke. Those are mutagens. They're known to cause mutations. Now, those mutations can do nothing, in which they are silent. So your DNA changes, but the amino acid sequence of the protein that it codes for is not affected. It can be a missense mutation in which a single amino acid is affected, or it could be a nonsense mutation in which you insert a stop codon where you shouldn't have a stop codon. If all of that feels really unfamiliar, please feel free to go back to the lectures from 221 and review the genetics. Now, mutation is usually kind of no benefit, really. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. Often it's just like, it's there. And it happens all the time. Like we just have mutations as our cells divide. So that's like a major driving force for evolution is the sporadic changes in our DNA every time that we reproduce or every time that we create new cells in meiosis and mitosis. Another way that we can influence evolution is gene flow. So gene flow, and I like to picture like a river, is genes flowing in or out of a population. We describe this as immigration, which is going into a population. So I have immigrated into Oregon, and emigration, which is leaving a population. I emigrated California. So I left California. My genes are no longer going to be in the population of California. They're now in the population of Oregon. I have changed the gene pool of Oregon. Further, we have something called genetic drift. Sounds similar to gene flow, but now think like drift is not in the river, it's on the river. That helps me, like you're drifting on a raft. And genetic drift is going to be something that randomly causes part of your population to die off. Like there was a forest fire and it killed a family of squirrels in a tree, or there was a forest fire and it killed a type of plant that lives in that one area. It's not because they were well adapted or poorly adapted. It's because something happened and it randomly killed off part of the population. For example, we have something called the founder's effect. In the Galapagos Islands, the first finches to arrive there had adaptive radiation and changed over time to fit that island. That's an example of founder's effect. So all of the finches now are genetically more related to each other than they are to the finches on the mainland because they were founded by a single population. We also see this in the American Amish population. The American Amish are a group of people, and they were founded by a small population. And so they are genetically more related to each other than they are to the outside populations. We also have an example of this called the bottleneck effect. So in a bottleneck effect, only a small part of your original population survives. And so here's a visual for it. I have a bottle, and in this bottle, I have orange alleles, red alleles, and green alleles. And then something happens, maybe like a massive volcano or a tsunami or an earthquake or like a new predator moves in and this is a population of mice, whatever it is, something happens and the majority of my population dies off. And what's left is not representative of what used to be there. So now if I turn this bottle over quickly, they kind of get jammed up in the bottle and only a few will fall out. That's why it's called the bottleneck effect. These few that fell out, we only have a few green and mostly orange. That does not represent what the original population was. This can lead to an inbreeding depression because now, if I look at my gene pool, I've lost variation. I have more of alleles that are similar to each other, and my mate selection is decreased. In inbreeding depression, alleles that are often hidden in a population because they're usually covered by healthy alleles become more apparent, and mutations that would be rare become more common. Another thing that leads to evolution is, of course, natural selection. That's what we talked about last time. Natural selection is the forces in the environment where you live. Think about beetles living on a certain plant or flowers trying to get their pollen across the field. It's where you live having an effect on what types of traits are successful and what types of traits are not successful. Now, natural selection is the only mechanism of evolution, the only force behind evolution that can lead to adaptation. And adaptation is a trait that makes you more suited to reproduce and survive and win in your environment. So in some cases, it's something like a peacock tail feather, which makes you more desirable to female peacocks. And if you're more desirable, you'll have more chances to mate. Sometimes it would be like a bug that is better camouflaged, and so it's able to fit into its environment better, and then it's able to survive and possibly reproduce more because it survived longer. But it's a thing that helps you survive in your environment, and it's environment specific. So if you were to pick up that organism and put it in a different environment, that adaptation is now no longer useful. I have a reading assignment for you. There's 3 articles. They're each short. They're each really interesting, and they're going to talk about the evolution of a certain type of population. So I have the Amish population that I mentioned a little bit ago. I have elephant seals, which are fantastic, and I have cheetahs, one of the most regal creatures. I love cheetahs. So I'm going to post those 3 articles to Blackboard for you. Please give them a read. It's going to help expand upon these ideas. Then another requirement needed for natural selection, specifically, one of our main mechanisms of evolution, is that individuals have to vary in traits. And so I have 2 pictures of my boys. I'm sitting on the couch, I'm reading. Max is desperate for attention. He just loves to put his belly up in the air and be like right in your business. And Parker likes to stand on the side of the couch and glare and watch, but he doesn't like to participate. So he's my standoffish, skittish cat, and Max is my low flight distance, very much affectionate cat. How could this lead to evolution? Well, it depends. If I was looking for someone to be an active mouser in my barn, I would reward Parker for being observant and for being watchful and for being very attentive. If I was looking for a cat to be a sweet lover boy, I would choose Max and I would reward him for being so low in flight distance and having such a wonderful belly. So natural selection is choosing which traits are better suited to the environment. And we're going to have different types of traits in each individual. So these are both the same species. They're both the same age. They're both from the same population, but they're not the same. Now, individuals can differ in morphology, which is their physical structures, just like my cats do. They can differ in physiology, which is metabolism, immune response. Everyone has a different physiology, so we're slightly different. That's more of our microevolution. And behavior, we can differ in behavior, like I just described with their 2 different demeanors. I have many different types of examples of behavior for you because this is one of the parts of biology that I find fascinating. So in our animal kingdom, we have consolation behaviors. Consolation behaviors are keeping other organisms of your species feeling safe and happy and like caring about them. This is shown as cats grooming each other. This is shown as other primates grooming each other and picking each other, also making them feel safe when they're afraid. So those are consolation behaviors. We have foraging behaviors, which is like the squirrels that are in my backyard. They will sit on the fence and they will shake their tails up and down as they're watching who is coming to the bird feeders. And that helps them communicate with the other squirrels about whether or not it's safe to come to the bird feeder and forage. So foraging behaviors are types of behaviors that vary between individuals. We have navigation behaviors. So turtles can feel electromagnetic fields and they can feel which way is north, which help them migrate through the sea. We have communication behaviors, both physically, verbally, with grunts or howls or bird songs, but also with pheromones. Those are all communication behaviors. We have deceitful behavior, which is fascinating. I have a video of deceitful behavior I'm going to post on Blackboard for you. We have altruistic behaviors, which means that there's a little bit of self-sacrifice. We're going to talk about the math behind that later. But something like a prairie dog, you always see them standing up on their back feet above their dens. That's because one of them is standing tall, becoming a potential target for predators to watch the area and see if a threat is approaching. If a threat does approach, they screech, they go, and that sound alerts all the other prairie dogs to go hide, but it also makes the alarm sounder a higher target. So they are choosing to put themselves in danger for the safety of their den mates, for their family, maybe their offspring, maybe their siblings, maybe their parents. So that's altruistic behavior. And we also have mating behavior. I mentioned the peacock tail feather. When a peacock wants to show off to a peahen, which is the female peacock, he will put his tail up behind him and he will shake it. And those eyes on his tail will shimmer and it will be mesmerizing and beautiful. And he will hop around and like show all the eyes to the females. And the more eyes he has on his tail, the more likely he is to get the opportunity to mate with the female and pass on his genes. So all of those behaviors differ between species, but they also differ between individuals in those species. So if I'm better at foraging, I might survive longer and be able to reproduce. Or if I'm better at communicating, I might thrive longer and be able to reproduce. Another thing that we need for natural selection is we need to pass on those variants to our offspring. And each of our offspring are going to have different variations. So I've got a picture of me and mom because we look really similar. We are really similar, but I'm about 50% her DNA. So even though we're really much alike, I'm only half similar to her. That's a lot of difference. Another thing that we need is we need competition for survival, and we need some traits to be more beneficial than others. I have this video from the original planet Earth. It's about racer snakes. It's incredible. I recommend you watch it. But if you are scared of snakes, please skip it because I love snakes. I am not scared of snakes. And this has so many snakes that it still gives me a little bit of the creeps. So you're welcome to skip this one, but I still think it's incredible and I'm going to put it up. And the reason that I like it so much is because it shows intense competition for survival. So some of these snake offspring are better suited to escape, better suited to get food and survive. And some of the food that they're going to eat, which is lizards, are better suited to escape. Speciation is the creation of a new species, and we have two different ways that we can do it. We can do it inside a geographic area, which is sympatric speciation, or we can do it with some kind of geographic isolation, which is allopatric speciation. What helps me with this vocab is taking the words apart. So Patrick means location, like your place, your hometown. It's the root of the word patriot. So this is your place. Sim is same and allo is different. So allopatric means different place speciation and sympatric means same place speciation. So here's an example of allopatric speciation. I have one population of trees that exists, and over time, there would be a river running through it. It would create a canyon. Now my trees are geographically isolated and their gene pool will slowly diverge with microevolution, and maybe that will lead to them becoming different species over time. Sympatric speciation, the same thing would happen, but it happens in one location. So now I don't need to geographically isolate my two species. Instead, I have something happen, like maybe a mutation led to a different type of gamete, and so was no longer able to reproduce with its neighbors, but it could self-reproduce, and that led to the creation of a new species in one place without any geographic isolation. So sim being same, Patrick being location. We also have reproductive isolation that can lead to speciation. So we have two different types of reproductive isolation. We have pre-zygotic, which is before the zygote forms, and we have post-zygotic, which is after the zygote forms. So if it's pre-zygotic isolation, that means that your two organisms can't get together in some way. So here are the ways that they might not be able to get together. One is temporal isolation. Temporal means time. That could be that you have different breeding schedules. Like if I am a flower that is open in January, I'm not going to get pollinated and share my pollen with a flower that's only open in August. So that would be temporal. Or birds that have different migratory schedules, they could just like pass each other and not have the opportunity to breed. So different times, different locations, different breeding schedules. Another one is habitat isolation. They could be physically separated. Now this can happen in a smaller area than you think. Sometimes in a single tree, it's divided into different habitats. So some birds will only hang out in the top of the tree, and some birds will only hang out in the bottom of the tree. Because of that, they might not get together. We also have different types of habitats that are bigger than this. So you will probably only have children with someone that you physically meet in person, and we physically only meet the people that are around us. So that's habitat isolation. Then we have behavioral isolation. So if I'm a bird and I'm singing my bird song, only birds of my same species should recognize it and come to me. If I'm singing a different song, I would attract different birds of different species. Same thing for like mating displays or trying to compete for mates like elk do. And then we have gametic barriers. In gametic barriers, the reproductive organs are incompatible. So that means that they might not fit together. The lock and key thing might not work, but also maybe the sperm is not recognized by the egg. They won't fuse. So there won't be a zygote. So you might be able to mate, but it won't create a zygote. So those are pre-zygotic. In contrast, post-zygotic, your organisms see each other, they recognize each other, they decide to mate, whether or not they're the same species, they have mating occur, and they create a zygote. So all of those other barriers have been overcome. And then we have two options that could create more reproductive isolation. So once you create that zygote, it grows into an embryo, but your hybrid is inviable, which means that the embryo does not survive development. That's hybrid inviability. Another option is your zygote develops into an embryo and you birth your baby, but your baby itself is sterile. That's hybrid sterility, is what happens when a horse and a donkey mate, creating a mule. That mule is viable. It goes from zygote to embryo to baby. It lives its life perfectly well, but it itself is sterile and cannot continue on its lineage. So that is hybrid sterility. All right. I hope that was interesting. Have a great day. Email me anytime with questions, and we will talk soon. Bye.